Okay. Hi, Ed. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Doing fine. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. Nice to have you with us.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
So, I've got your bio here. You've got a book out called On Learning to Heal. The first thing I want to touch on, though, it says at 13 you were diagnosed with Crohn's disease. Uh, can you
Yeah,
explain what Crohn's disease is? Because maybe not everybody knows what it is.
it is one of the more famous of the gastrointestinal illnesses. Perhaps people have seen the ads on TV for the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation or for the various biologics that are now being sold to suppress the immune system to prevent the symptoms. But Crohn's disease is one of a whole class of autoimmune illnesses which affect different parts of the body. There are now like 80 to 100 different diseases that are considered to be autoimmune. And autoimmunity, well, it's a very complex concept. It's sort of a paradox within medicine. They don't know why it occurs or how it occurs or what it is really. They just know they can treat its symptoms. And it's the idea is that somehow the immune system mistakes part of your own organism as if it were a foreign body and attacks it is the way that they would talk about it. So Crohn's disease is an autoimmune illness that affects the entire lining of the gut from anywhere from the mouth to the anus. I had a version of it's called regional enteritis, which is located in the entire small bowel, which becomes inflamed and dysfunctional and lots of messy kinds of side effects. So yeah, I was diagnosed when I was 13. So this is my 50th anniversary of Crohn's. It's my golden anniversary. Um, I'm actually quite happy to have lived this long. That's wasn't always a guarantee.
Well, I'm glad you're still with us.
Thank you.
So, obviously, at 13, this would have been pretty traumatic. And how did it affect your life in terms of were you able to live a fairly normal life, or did you have to do, I don't know, homeschooling, or what was your routine like at that age?
What happened was I was diagnosed when I was 13 after a very acute episode, and 50 years ago it wasn't immediately obvious. Now it's a little more easy to diagnose with people. But when I was eventually diagnosed with Crohn's, the treatment at the time was massive doses of prednisone. And maybe people are familiar with prednisone. They give it for everything from, you know, bad allergies to brain tumors. It's sort of it is a kind of miracle drug. It's a cortisone steroid. So I was put on massive doses of prednisone. And if you don't know anything about prednisone, besides the things that they want it to do, which is to suppress your immune function, it has many, many side effects, including physiological ones, like you get really put on a lot of weight, you get this kind of cushoid face, your face blows up, and your bones, kind of get thinned, and there's all kinds of secondary physiological stuff, but there's major psychological stuff that goes on with it: anxiety, depression, dissociation. It's a panoply of basically what the way I describe it is being on those doses of prednisone for a long time. I was on them for a decade. It's like a pharmaceutically induced mental illness. So basically, I refer to it as my adolescence on steroids. It was a kind of crazy time. Yeah. So I tried to do as best I could, but basically I was incontinent from the time I was 13 until my mid 20s. And, if you're incontinent, it does put a little crimp in your life for sure.
Oh, I think a big one. I've heard of
Yeah.
that. Wasn't that the stuff that they used to inject President Kennedy with because of his Addison's disease? He was
Yes. So
getting,
Addison's would be
yeah,
another autoimmune illness. Yep, exactly.
okay.
So now there are better drugs like that. So the ones you hear about are these biologics like Remicade, and there's a whole panoply of them now, and they keep inventing new ones. they're monoclonal antibodies. And so they have fewer of these side effects. And so more people, that's what they would, like nobody would be on prednisone for 10 years the way that I was, for, that's just not a thing anymore.
Are you still taking medication currently?
No, I'm not. I was very, very lucky. 10 years after I was diagnosed, I had another really acute episode of Crohn's, during which I had undetected bowel perforation, as a result of which I got unbelievable peritoneal infection, including like a giant abscess on a blood vessel on the outside of my small bowel, which was undetected, and it would burst, and then I would gush blood out of my anus. And eventually I had a near-death bleed out. I had one of those, famous out-of-body near-death experiences, which was quite remarkable. And then I was rushed to emergency surgery, and I lived. That was good. But when I was recovering, because I was really, my whole body was infected, especially my liver. Parts of my liver had to be removed. So I had to be in the hospital for a long time after surgery on like high doses of antibiotics and painkillers. I spontaneously started going into these trances. Just to give you a frame of reference, so I came from a really dogmatically atheist family. My mother was a communist. My father was a physical chemist. They were like, secular Jews who God, spirit, nothing existed. All that mattered was matter. So, I started having these experiences where I could listen to music on my Walkman, and then I could go into this place where there was all this light, and I could kind of mold the light and put it around like the parts of my body that had been removed. I had parts of my intestines removed, parts of my liver removed, and just sort of, it was like a comforting. That's all I thought of it. It was like pain management, and then I could just drop into like this zone where I wasn't really there anymore. It was just in this really wonderful, expansive, light-filled place. And at first that freaked all of my doctors and nurses out, because they would come in and they would try to talk to me and I would be like not there. But then eventually they figured out that if they turned off the music, that I would eventually come out of it. And then after that, it was, just sort of normal. But when I left the hospital after a couple more months, I had an exit interview with my surgeon, and he said this thing to me that just kind of seared itself into my brain, which was, he said, "You were the sickest person I've operated on in 5 years who's still alive, and I have no idea how you got better." That really kind of that really woke me up in a really dramatic way. I mean, on the one hand, because I was 23 at the time. I was kind of in denial about how sick I'd been. So to hear my surgeon tell me that was really, eye-opening. And but to hear my surgeon say, "I don't know how you got better so quickly," that really was something, because I had never heard. I mean, I had seen many doctors by that point, and I had never heard any of them say, "I don't know." And that was really a reorientation about my whole relationship to medicine. And after that, I guess I would say I woke up. I realized that I really needed to think about how I was living and to figure out other ways of living so that I didn't have to go through that experience again. And as a result, I started finding different kinds of teachers and therapists and body workers. And basically, I've been on this healing journey for the last 40 years. And, the book that you mentioned on learning to heal, or What Medicine Doesn't Know, isn't really a book about my learning curve, like how I went from being medicalized for a decade in very intense ways, and nobody ever mentioned healing to me. And then having this very dramatic experience, and then coming out of it and realizing, medicine's great. I give thanks that I'm alive and it saved my life. But there's a lot that medicine doesn't know. And one of the things that it no longer knows about is healing. So I've been really lucky. I have symptoms from time to time if I get stressed or different things happen or whatever. But no, I haven't had to be on meds, at least immunosuppressing meds. For 40 years.
40 years. Wow, that's great.
Yeah, pretty amazing. Yeah, it is. I'm very grateful for that. That's been amazing.
So we've got about 3 minutes left, and I just want to kind of touch on the book. I'll give you a time check there, okay?
I'm sorry I went on too long. Yeah.
That's okay. That's all right. It's a very interesting story. So what is the healing? What are you doing? Or what were you doing then that was different, than taking medication? Was this meditation? Was it holistic? Give me like a little bit of an example of something that you did.
So all I've done, believe me, at this point, I've done everything.
All of the above.
I tried a little of this.
Okay.
But really what I would say is the most significant thing isn't any particular technique or practice. There's so many, and there's so many in the world, that I don't even know about. But the point is to recognize that healing is a tendency. It's a natural tendency. All living organisms tend to heal. If not, we'd be dead. And we live in a culture that has developed a really amazing kind of therapeutic practice, but that has forgotten the intrinsic power of healing. Healing for thousands of years was what medicine did. Medicine was there to support and encourage the power of healing. Medicine now tries to cure us, and curing is not healing. It's not the same thing. Healing really, to my mind, it just represents our capacity as living organisms to enhance the quality of how we live in the conditions in which we live. So everybody can heal. Everybody does heal. We heal all the time. But when we begin to desire healing and to value healing and to integrate it into our lives, then we have a lot more choices of how we live that may, in fact, enhance, the quality of our daily lives in many very important ways.
Have you ever been able to get back to that place where you had the music on and the light was moving? Have you ever gotten back there?
Well, yes and no. On some drugs.
On some drugs,
and,
okay.
Which, that's a thing. But yes, I do a kind of practice called Continuum, which is a movement, meditation, breathing practice. And it's a collective process. And in that realm, definitely the other possibilities that we all have that make us who we are as living organisms, but that in the world that we live in, we tend to kind of have blinkers on in terms of like what we think is important. And, we think, we have to go to work, we have to be productive, we have to, necessary things. We need to earn a living, we need to have a house, whatever. But there are all these other aspects of our existence as living beings that are happening, like in our cells and molecules all of the time. And if we attend to them, if we value them, if we invoke them, then yes, it is possible, and I have experienced this, to move into that kind of more spacious way of experiencing what we are, not who we are, but what we are. And that's the precept of Buddhism's whole teleology, its whole value system is oriented towards having that experience. Many cultures, trance, dancing, many cultures, have techniques for invoking that. So yes, I have done that. And not on a daily basis, but I do meditate regularly, and that helps.
Well, we do have to wind this down, Ed. Unfortunately, we are just out of time. My guest is Ed Cohen. The book is called On Learning to Heal. What was the second half?
It's Or What Medicine Doesn't Know.
Or What Medicine Doesn't Know. Okay. And the book is available now. Is it out?
It is out. It's on Amazon. And if people want, I have a website. I have a therapeutic practice for people who are interested in healing, primarily people with chronic and life-threatening illnesses. And that's healingcounsel.com. And the book's available through my website as well as your favorite book dealer.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was very interesting. And
oh, my pleasure.
Glad you are better.
Thank you. Me too.
And best of luck with the book. I hope it does well.
Thank you.